Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is the start of April. Actually, it's April 2nd, so it's not really the start, but it's still a new month, and so we once again find ourselves at a point where I have to do a wrap-up and a TBR video. I read quite a bit in March. A fair amount. Didn't get to as much as I wanted to, just because Invisible Man has been taking a long time, as it should. It's a very hefty book, and I can see why it needs to be the way it is, but also it's just very wordy. So that's what I've been doing in March. I have a lot planned for April. I hope I can get to it all and also touch upon a couple books that I've been meaning to read, but just for some reason haven't been able to get to, as I've had to push them to the side. So, without further ado, let's talk about March and April. I'll do the wrap-up first, followed by the TBR. So, what did I read in March? What does the wrap-up look like? In terms of books that I read, one book that I read was Deacon King Kong by James McBride, which I thought it was good. It was a really solid book that held on to a lot of the history of New York City and the Black experience during and after the Great Migration from the South to the North. But the ending was kind of messy, and it undermined the idea of the book. It was overly optimistic in a way that kind of, soured the ending. I get why it was optimistic. Nobody wants really a downer ending. But I feel like it could have been handled a bit better. Especially how the deacon, was treating the youth drug dealer in this story. I thought it was interesting, but it denied the reality for this drug dealer, and it was almost a home run, but not quite. I also read Watchmen by Alan Moore. I gotta admit, I was ready to hate it because I thought, maybe this is gonna be overhyped or something. But I found that much like with Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, it's hyped up for a reason. It's one of the best pieces of comic book literature out there. A really solid story that delves into superheroes and the nature of superheroism. I feel like every story since then has kind of been trying to capture this same magic to mixed success. So definitely something that I recommend if you're getting into comic books and you want to read a solid story. I also read the volume 8 of The Sandman, The World's End, which I thought was great and mysterious. It was one of the Sandman volumes that had a bunch of short stories rather than a main story weave through, which I'm a fan of. I think Neil Gaiman is really good. Neil Gaiman, sorry. I think he's really good at telling those short stories and making the Endless out to be amazing and wonderful characters. And there was also the element of the funeral at the end of the story, and I want to know, what's the deal with that? And so I gotta keep reading to find out more. I also read Princess Mia, which I think is the 8th or 9th volume of the Princess Diaries series, which I thought was fine. It's okay. It's one of the better installments in the series, but given that it happened so late in the series, that's inconsequential. It's like if in the Harry Potter series the story wasn't good until book 5, then why even bother reading books 1 through 4? It's the same problem I had with the Percy Jackson series. The first book was kind of bad, so it soured my opinion of the rest of the series, and so. It's fine, but probably not worth exploring. on your own. I'll be reading the final 2 volumes here pretty soon, though. I was reading on Twitter that some people had casually brought up Grandma from the Princess Diaries series, Grandmere, and how they liked the series. And so like it's true that like people like the series. I don't get why. Like even for like children's, teen, young adult lit, this is bad. Like this is some of the worst offerings you can get. Something that there's no consistency between the series. Like the only consistency is Grandmere, and that's bad. Like she keeps undermining Princess Mia, and that's not even to say that like Princess Mia, the story itself, it undermines Mia's agency within the story, because at the very end of the story she finds out that that one of her ancestors wanted to make Genovia a constitutional monarchy or something like that. Basically, there's a parliament and the king and queen and stuff don't really have that much power, and so it undermines Princess Mia. You've been training her this entire series to make her a princess, and then you took that away from her. What's the point of this entire series then? It's frustrating. It's really ridiculous, and I could go on forever, but I'm going to stop myself because I don't want to make this entire video about how much the Princess Diaries series sucks. I also read White Negroes, a story, a nonfiction piece about of cultural appropriation, at least in the United States. And I thought it was very challenging and very entertaining. I ended up reading it for a book club, and I got to discuss it there as well with some people who had some pretty interesting thoughts. I think it was definitely an important read on my end, and it allowed me to understand more about how I can go about advocating for people of color, and also challenge some of my own problematic behaviors that I need to work on if I'm going to be effective in serving these communities. So definitely something I would recommend, and I'm going to seek out more nonfiction like it for next month. So that's something to consider. I also read a number of short stories for March. It was a rare month where almost every story was perfect in some way. None of those bad short stories that leave you wondering like why you even bothered to read them in the first place, such as the ones that I've been checking out from my local library. But a lot of good ones. For instance, I read Death Chronicle, which was bizarre but pretty good. I like the sort of hallucinations that the character was seeing of their past misdeeds, and how they were torn apart by the villagers when this came to be known. I also liked The Immortal by Mary Shelley, which was amazing. I didn't know that Mary Shelley had written short stories. I didn't know she had written anything besides Frankenstein, because Frankenstein is all we talk about. And yeah, it absolutely should be emphasized. It's one of the best pieces of literature out there. But Immortal is also great because of the terrifying existential threat of knowing that maybe you can die, but you're probably going to live forever, and you're going to outlive anybody and everybody, and that's a terrifying prospect. So definitely cool that Mary Shelley saw that side of things. I also read Charlie Marts by Elmore Leonard, which I thought was pretty fun and gritty. I loved the western feel of it, and the blunt, the very blunt ending where Charlie Marts just shoots the outlaw who's come to kill him, and it's then he goes about his business. Like that's that, and it feels very true to life. Sometimes life just ends, and that's that. There's nothing to make of it. So I also recommend that you seek that one out if you can find it. I also read The Father by a Norwegian author whose name I am forgetting at the moment. I'll put it up there. But I thought it was good. It wasn't the best short story I read this month. In fact, I think it was probably the worst. It was still good, but compared to the other short stories I read, it left me wanting more. And I think it was mainly because this was sort of a metaphorical take. Like you weren't supposed to read it on the surface, but what it represented underneath. And again, with those kind of short stories, like there's not a lot of substance to them. It's purely what you're trying to say, outside of the short story. So definitely, and maybe check it out, but also check out some of the other ones that I've talked about first. And then finally, I read Three Skeleton Key, which was spooky and suspenseful. It's by George Gustave Tuduzzi, someone I had never heard about before, but I would be interested in checking out more from him. I really liked how he built up the suspense and the scariness leading up to introducing the rats. And yeah, I definitely recommend it if you can find it, because it'd be a really great thing to read for Halloween, because it's right in line with the other spooky stories that exist in the world. And then I read a number of poems and also did some tag videos in the month of March. I recommend that you go check them out on my playlist for my poems and also my playlist for tags. You might learn something new about me, who knows. And now we move on to my to be read, my TBR, my TBR, as some people say, for the month of April. I have a number of books planned that I want to get to in the month of April. I probably won't get to them all, but I'll make sure to schedule them in for a later date. One of them is Under the Red Hood. It's a Batman comic, which is kind of a sort of sequel to A Death in the Family. I'm sure people know by now, but it's the comic where Jason Todd comes back, and I can't wait to read it. I've heard a number of good things about it, although there are a lot of people who are upset about Jason Todd. Them saying, "Oh, we're killing him off permanently," and then bringing him back 20 years later. That can certainly be frustrating. I am also going to read at least volume 1 of Nightfall, the comic where Bane breaks Batman. In terms of comic books in general, like, that's one that excites me, because it's Batman's weakness. He used to be super strong compared to other villains, but the Bane is the one who broke the Bat. And I've never read it before, but I've heard a lot about it because it's all around pop culture. So I'm looking forward to reading that too, and as well as other comics that I've checked out from the library or plan to read. I definitely want to get to the next volume of the Sandman series, which I believe, according to this, is the Kindly ones, which I think they might have at my library. I might not have to buy that one, but I'll buy it anyways, just so I can have it. I also want to read We Had a Little Bit of a Real Estate Problem, which is about indigenous individuals in the United States. That's also something I want to read for the book club that I'm doing in the month of April. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm always willing to read about indigenous groups, especially in the United States, because they have not had the best of times, and there's a number of things that we should be talking about as it pertains to indigenous groups, such as the fact that a lot of sex crimes are perpetrated against Indian women, and that is definitely not cool, and we need to talk more about that, and also the missing indigenous kids and missing indigenous women. So a lot to talk about with that book. I also want to read Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, something that I've been meaning to get to but just haven't. I'll probably read that a little bit later at the end of the month. Picking up some other books from my local library that I might want to check out. I don't know what, it's kind of at random there. The next book in the Princess Diaries series, perhaps. I don't know if I'm actually going to get to it in the month of April, and I probably shouldn't, to be honest. It's probably not going to be very good. And then finally, I do want to read Beloved by Toni Morrison. I had penciled that in for last month, but I never got around to it, and I do really want to get to it, as I've heard great things about Toni Morrison. I also have a number of short stories planned for the month of April. This includes something by Anton Chekhov. I don't know what yet, but I've heard a lot about Anton Chekhov. The boys over at the Codex Cantina talk about him an awful lot, in addition to other Russian and Eastern European authors. So that is something that I would love to check out. I don't really have any experience with Chekhov or Dostoevsky or Tolstoy, so I would love to fill in those gaps, but probably not reading their books yet, their longer form books, because that'd probably be a struggle at this point in time. Anyways, I also want to read short stories by Arthur C. Clarke, Zora Neale Hurston, and probably some others that I can find at my local library. Really looking forward to that. And then finally, I'm going to read a number of poems. I actually did not do a poem for April 1st, as I wanted to instead talk about the greatest book ever written, which of course you will find if you go seek out that video, a lovely April 1st video for all of my reader friends out there. And then, yeah, of course, I'll try to find more poetry and do more tag videos, just because hopefully I can find tag videos that are different and don't just simply ask the same question that every other tag video asks. So yeah, if you can think of anything, send them my way. I would love to do those tag videos. Anyway, that is the wrap up and TBR for April. A lot of stuff read in March and a lot of stuff planned in April. I hope I managed to get to it all. And if I don't, that's fine. There's always May and June and July and the future. So worth checking out. If you think there's something specific that I should check out, maybe a short story, maybe a poem, something like that, feel free to comment below. I would love to hear from you. Let's have a discussion about books. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people may find out about my channel. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and April Foolsy travels. Farewell.